The palace was quiet, too quiet. Everyone expected silence, calm, routine. But suddenly, everything changed. A single announcement shattered weeks of secrecy. And just when the world thought they understood the royal plan, the palace revealed something that no one was prepared for. Because the truth wasn't just a date. It was a decision that would reshape the monarchy forever. For months, speculation had filled the air. Whispers in Madrid, rumors in Copenhagen, endless theories from royal watchers across Europe. But behind closed doors, within the thick stone walls of the Zarzuela Palace, a tension had been quietly growing. A decision had been made long before anyone realized. And that decision would soon ignite a new era for the Spanish crown. The palace confirmation did not come lightly. It arrived with the weight of centuries, the weight of tradition, and the weight of a future queen who understood both duty and love. The world expected hesitation. They expected delays. They expected the palace to remain silent for just a little longer. But instead, the palace did the opposite. They stepped forward, and finally, they spoke. And now, the world knows. The wedding date has finally been set. But what the public doesn't know is the journey behind that date. The quiet debates, the emotional conversations, the late-night meetings between King Felipe VI and Queen Letizia. The private discussions between Princess Leonor and her closest confidants. And the way every decision carried not just political meaning, but personal weight. The palace didn't rush this revelation. They couldn't. Because this is not just a royal wedding. This is the wedding of the future Queen of Spain. A moment that marks the passing of generations. A moment that signals stability during uncertain times. A moment that ties together two families, two traditions, two nations. And most importantly, two hearts. But before the date was chosen, there were questions. Serious questions. Would the wedding reflect the strict expectations of the Spanish monarchy? Or the modern vision Leonor herself has quietly shaped since childhood? Would it be a grand cathedral ceremony echoing centuries of royal heritage? Or a more intimate service reflecting the values she learned from her parents? And perhaps the biggest question of all, would this date unite the royal family or divide them? To understand why the date matters, we need to look deeper. Long before Leonor was heir, she was simply a daughter. A sister. A young woman navigating the impossible balance between personal freedom and royal obligation. And as she grew older, that balance became more fragile. Behind the scenes, the pressure wasn't always gentle. The Spanish press watched her every move, every expression, every friendship. The global media, fascinated by her elegance and resolve, speculated endlessly about her future. Yet even in the middle of that storm, she stood calm. Graceful. Determined. That determination would later shape her wedding day in ways the public never realized. Because the palace didn't choose the date alone. Leonor had a voice. A firm one. And she used it. Behind a closed door, she sat with her parents, King Felipe and Queen Letizia. The discussion wasn't royal. It wasn't formal. It was family. Father, mother, daughter. They spoke about responsibility. They spoke about love. They spoke about the weight of history. And slowly, piece by piece, the date was chosen. It wasn't based on politics. It wasn't based on protocol. It was based on meaning. A meaning only the three of them fully understood. But as soon as the date was finalized, a new wave of tension began to ripple throughout the palace. Advisors scrambled. Schedules shifted. Security plans expanded. Invitations had to be drafted. With precision. International monarchies needed to be notified. Everything from diplomatic seating arrangements to ceremonial procession routes had to be re-evaluated. And yet, even with the chaos swirling around her, Leonor remained serene. She had waited her entire life for moments like this. Not the glamour, nor the attention, but the responsibility. And now that responsibility was calling her forward. Still, one question lingered, unspoken yet felt by everyone: how would the public react? Spain has always been passionate about its monarchy. Loyal, emotional, protective, but also demanding. Expectations are high, criticism can be sharp, and no royal announcement escapes intense scrutiny. A wedding date carries symbolism. It carries national pride. It carries political implications. Would the people approve? Would they embrace this moment? Or would the timing spark controversy? The palace was prepared for anything. But what came next surprised them. The public reaction wasn't anger. It wasn't skepticism. It wasn't division. It was something else entirely. It was joy. Across Spain, celebrations erupted. Social media flooded with excitement. Royal supporters filled the plazas. Citizens who had watched Leonor grow up felt they were witnessing the rise of a new generation. A generation of hope, stability, and quiet strength. But the palace knew the celebration was only the beginning. Because as one question is answered, another always emerges. Now that the date was confirmed, what about the location? Would they choose the historic Almedina Cathedral, where Felipe and Letizia were married 21 years earlier? Would they choose a symbolic royal monastery? Or something else entirely? Each option carried a different message. A different meaning. A different future. And just as the public settled into one theory, new details surfaced. The palace had already chosen the location, but they had kept it secret. Not out of fear, not out of uncertainty, but because the choice was deeply personal to Leonor. A place tied to a memory she had carried since childhood. A place connected to her identity as the future Queen of Spain. Then, a second revelation sparked a new wave of speculation: who would be invited? European monarchs, without question. Heads of state, diplomats, members of the Spanish government. But what about Princess Leonor's closest friends? Her fellow cadets from the military academy. Individuals who witnessed her transform from royal teenager to disciplined, resilient leader. The guest list became its own entity, full of mystery and emotional nuance. Because Leonor's life has always been a delicate balance between public duty and private relationships. Choosing who stands closest to her on that day reflects not just her personal life, but her future reign. And while the world speculated, Queen Letizia quietly stepped into her own role. Protective mother, supportive queen, advisor. She had been the one guiding Leonor for years, preparing her not with pressure but with patience. Not with force, but wisdom. And now she would guide her through the final steps toward becoming a married woman and eventual monarch. Meanwhile, King Felipe carried his own silent burden. He knew the crown was not just a symbol. It was a weight, one he had held for decades. And soon, his daughter would carry it too. The wedding date wasn't just a celebration. It was a transition, a reminder that time moves forward, that leadership evolves, that the monarchy must grow with the world, or risk being left behind. But beneath all the formality, something tender remained. A father watching his daughter step into the next chapter of her life. A mother watching her child take on a role she once feared would consume her. A family navigating both love and duty under the brightest spotlight in Europe. Still, the most surprising detail about the confirmed wedding date has nothing to do with calendars or logistics. It has to do with the palace's true intentions. Because this wedding isn't simply an event. It is a statement, a declaration of continuity, a reminder that Spain's future queen is ready, not because of her title, but because of her character. And that is why the palace chose to confirm the date now, at this exact moment. Not too early, not too late. But precisely when the nation needed reassurance, when they needed a symbol of unity, hope, and stability. As the world prepares for the ceremony, another curiosity loop quietly forms: what surprises will the palace reveal next? The gown design, the royal procession, the historical displays, the family moments that will melt hearts across the world. Each layer holds its own emotion, its own symbolism, its own power. And as the days move closer to the wedding, the palace will reveal more. Piece by piece, moment by moment, until finally, the world sees everything come together in one extraordinary, unforgettable day. The date is set, the path is clear, the future queen is ready, and the world is watching. Because this isn't just a royal wedding, it is the beginning of a new chapter in the monarchy's story. And Princess Leonor is stepping into it with grace, courage, and a love strong enough to carry a crown.